Alright everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of the best brew ever. I know it's been a while since we brewed anything, and I've been talking about a homegrown episode. Like I said, not homegrown as what you may be thinking. Homegrown as in this giant tree. Yes, today we're going to do a spruce beer, and it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Since I kind of got into kind of brewing crazy things. I mean, I know I haven't brewed a whole lot of crazy things on the channel, but off the record, I've done crazy beers before. I tried to do like a breakfast beer before, where I did try to mash cereal, and pretty much I just made like a weird wash, but it was like cereal and maple syrup or something like that. But so I've been wanting to do this since I heard about Spruce beer, and we had this huge tree available. I know I wanted to do it in the springtime when they had the tips of the spruce were had new growths. People say it gives it like a kind of like a lemony flavor, but from the little bit of research that I've done about spruce beers, there's a lot of conflicting stories. Some say don't use the spruce tips, excuse me, others say do. And even the origin of the actual beer, has been conflicting. On an article I read, it said it came from Europe, the style of beer. Others, I read that the Native Americans gave it to the settlers. The idea of the spruce tea, so it actually has vitamin C in it to help with the scurvy, and the settlers decided to make a beer out of it. So I really don't know the exact origins of the beer, but I know that most likely it didn't taste very good originally, because I think they just used the spruce tips or old growths, I think molasses. I think that might have been the only ingredients. I don't think they had mash or anything like that in there. So I didn't go the total traditional route with it, but I did use old growths because I wanted to make this in the spring, but I wasn't available. So I just did old growths and see what's going to come out. I mean, it could be gross either way. I don't know. I've never had it. I've never known anybody to make it, and I've never seen it for sale in any liquor store. So it's very new, and we'll just see what it's going to come out like. I'm only going to do a 1 gallon batch just for that reason. And even if it does come out really good, I just don't know if I want to drink 5 gallons of a spruce flavored beer. So I got a recipe, and a little here, a little there, kind of scaled it down, and just kind of experiment with it. But it's been a long time since we brewed. I wanted to get something out, and I've been wanting to make this beer, so why hold off? Just go full steam ahead, right? So it's pretty hot out here, so it's midsummer, and kind of in a little heat streak going. It's cooled off a little bit, not as hot as it was earlier, but I still think I'd rather get inside in the air conditioning. You can hear it running non-stop over there. So why don't we cut to the chase and get to the brewing. I started by gathering 1.6 ounces of old growth from what I believe to be a Colorado alpine growing in my yard. The original recipe called for 8 ounces, so I just scaled it down for the 1 gallon recipe. Next, I heated 1.5 gallons of water in a 12-quart stock pot. Looking back, it would have been better just to do 1 gallon because I kind of overfilled things after I put the extract in, as you can see later in the video. In place of the molasses, I'm using Spruce traditional dark liquid malt extract, and I put 2 pounds of it in a separate bowl. Now I just pour the malt extract into the hot water, stirring constantly so the extract doesn't stick to the bottom of the kettle, and that way it won't scorch the bottom or burn when we put it back onto the heat. This stuff is super thick, super sticky, just like molasses, and it kind of takes a lot to get everything dissolved and get everything out of the bowl. As you can kind of see, there's a lot stuck to that bowl, and I'm going to use some of the hot liquid to try to loosen it up and get all the sugar out of there that I can, because I mean, I paid for it, it's not cheap, and this is going to be what's going to give us our flavor and alcohol content. So we want to try to salvage as much as we can off the bottom and the sides of that bowl. And I'm actually going to dunk the bowl into the liquid and leave some of the hot liquid into the bowl, so hopefully it'll loosen it up and we can get as much as we can out of there. I'm not worried about anything getting into the wort from the bowl, because we are going to boil and it will pasteurize anything that's in there. After letting the liquid sit in the bowl for a while to try to loosen up the extract, go ahead and dump it back into your pot and try to scrape what you can out. As you can see, it's still thick, it's still sticky. This stuff is really hard to get out sometimes, but just do your best. Kind of scrape and rinse the best you can. You're probably not going to get 100% of everything out, but that's all right. Just do your best and get what you can. It's probably better to turn the burner off, because you see over in my right side, I am burning the hell out of my arm from that hot burner, but it was the angle I had to stand at because of the tripod. But just be careful, pay attention to what you're doing, and it should be all right. Now into my hop bag, I am going to add our hops. We are using 0.10 ounce Osaka, not 1 ounce, but 0.10. I thought this was going to be a good hop for it, because it has kind of like a grassy flavor to it anyway. Plus I want to kind of get rid of it. And to that, I also add our 1.6 ounces of clippings from the tree. And it turned out to fill out the bag pretty good. I couldn't imagine 8 ounces for the 5-gallon beer, but I think this worked out just fine. Now that we bring our wort up to a boil, as you can see, it's almost to the top, so it's dangerous. Make sure you have your cold water on hand, your spray bottle, and we are going to drop in our hops and spruce into the mixture. Be very careful at this point. As you can see, I'm spraying. This thing definitely wants to boil over, and you know how big of a mess that is. So just be very careful at this point. Like I said earlier, I really wish I would have done 1 gallon of water, but I thought with the boil off, I thought I was gonna have not enough wort in the end, but it turned out that I had a little too much. So I would scale down the initial strike water, and as you can see, this is a vigorous boil. My stove, the settings on it are kind of messed up,
so it's hard to kind of dial it in to where I need, because it kind of just does what it wants. As you can see how vigorous this is. At some point I think I actually have to take the pot off because it's about to just start going everywhere, and I had to cool off the burner there. After our 1 hour boil, we do this like every other beer. We have to cool it down so we can pitch our yeast. So I just got in a little ice bath. You know, a gallon of beer shouldn't take all that long. Keep cold water, ice, make sure nothing gets into the wort at this point, because you know, we're not gonna be able to sanitize the beer at this point with the wort. So just cool it down and get it ready for the yeast. Alright, now that the wort has been cooled to about 70 degrees, I am pouring in our wort into a sanitized jug, and that funnel has also been sanitized. And I took a refractometer reading. It came out to about 16 bricks, and I wish I would have put less strike water to this boil. 1 gallon would have been probably better, but because I did have extra wort left over in the kettle, as you can see, I'm overfilling the jug, and I did have blow off later during fermentation. So some things I would change right offhand. Now that we have the wort in the jug, I'm adding a generic Brewer's Best dry yeast. Usually I hydrate the yeast, but I didn't have time at this point, so I just went ahead and put about a tablespoon in there. I'm not sure what kind of yeast it is. It came out of a dry Irish stout kit, so I'm not sure if there's any difference in the yeast that they use, but that's what I was using. It's what I had. And now I have my rubber stopper with my airlock, fill up with sanitizer, click,